everybody, this is Red Rifle Sports and my name is Peter. In today's video, we're going to be looking at the top off-season needs for all 32 NFL teams. Just going to be doing one or two positions per team to do it quickly. So yeah, let's get right into it. First up, we have the Denver Broncos. I think wide receiver help is needed. Cortland Sutton and Noah Fant are two good young receiving parts of the receiving core there, but I don't think they can do it alone. Having a number two as Deshaun Hamilton or Tim Patrick's not going to cut it. Look for them to look for a receiver probably in the draft with the 15th pick. Also possibly losing Chris Harris. And just in general, I think our cornerbacks are not good enough. We signed Bryce Callahan last year. He was out the entire year last year. It was terrible. But yeah, I think we need help probably at an outside corner. I think having a lockdown corner is important in today's game. So hopefully we can pick that up maybe in free agency. Next up, Indianapolis Colts. I don't think Jacoby Brissett's good enough at quarterback. I just remember watching the Texans-Colts game last year. It was like Thursday Night Football. Colts outplayed the Texans in every category, but at the end of the day, Deshaun Watson was just better than Brissett, and the Texans ended up winning pretty comfortably. And I think wide receivers also needed for the Colts. They were the third worst for receiving yards across the whole league, and you would think with T.Y. Hilton, two great tight ends, and Ebron and Doyle, and at least par rated quarterback in Brissett, that they'd be all right, but no. Third worst receiving yards. They have a good line too, so I think a new quarterback and some weapons would really help that offense. San Francisco, obviously they got to the Super Bowl, so I don't think they have a ton of holes. I think wide receiver would be great, just having a good possession wide receiver, kind of like Michael Thomas. What team doesn't need a Michael Thomas? But I feel like they just have, Deebo Samuel, Emmanuel Sanders, like quick, fast, yards after the catch type receivers. But I think someone that's bigger can body up a cornerback and more of a red zone target besides George Kittle. That would really help their offense. They didn't have the greatest interior O-line. I can just think of the Super Bowl. Chris Jones getting multiple swatted balls. In the Super Bowl, obviously, Chris Jones is on the interior line and just allowing that pressure. Obviously, that's just one game, but their interior line was graded as one of the worst in the league last year. We got the Eagles next. Pretty obvious here. Wide receivers needed. You had Greg Ward being their main target for 1 week. And sure, they had injuries, but, Jackson went down, Jeffrey went down, but they still need more depth there. And they also need help at cornerback. One of their best cornerbacks, or at least one of their top cornerbacks going into the year last year, was Ronald Darby. He gave up a 17 yards per reception and a 118 passer rating when he was thrown to last year. I think that's got to set some records for just being absolutely terrible. So they'll need help at wide receiver and corner. Next, we got the Dolphins. Where do they not need help? They need O-line help. They were sacked 58 times. I think they need new wide receivers. They got Devontae Parker, who's great, but they led the NFL in drop passes with 28. Obviously, it's not all the receivers, but if they are going to bring in someone like Tua, some weapons are going to be needed. Next, we got the Panthers. They were also sacked 58 times. It doesn't help that they had an inexperienced quarterback and also Cam Newton, who isn't great at being calm in the pocket. But I think some O-line depth and maybe even a starter or two could help them out. And obviously, they have a huge question mark at QB. Kyle Allen, he started like 4 or 5-0, played great, but it was against some bad teams. Ended up just kept on losing and had a terrible QBR. Their total QBR for last year was the league's worst, 74.7. That's combined with Newton and Allen's numbers, and I think the 1 week where Will Greer started. So yeah, look for them to pick someone up. I wouldn't be surprised if they get someone like Rivers or something like that, but I'll be doing a whole other video on free agents and good fits and also the draft and all that. Next up, Cincinnati Bengals. They had the third worst QBR of 76.2. That's with Dalton's numbers included. And they have holes everywhere. It's pretty obvious they're going to get Burrow with a number 1 pick. I think Joe Mixon's a good back to build a franchise around, but then again, can you really build a franchise around a back? I don't think so. Tyler Eifert's on the end of his career, too many injuries. You have the huge AJ Green question mark. John Ross has not been good enough, too many injuries. They just need a whole new team, it feels like. think their defense has some okay pieces. I mean, yeah, literally the note I have here is QB and everything else. Next up, Chicago. I have wide receiver down. They were in the bottom 5 in terms of drops and catches over 25 yards. They averaged 9.6 yards a catch, which is dead last in the NFL. I don't think Trey Burton's helping them at all. So a wide receiver and a tight end would be great. Trubisky has had a terrible first 3 years in the league. I wouldn't be surprised if they go after someone kind of under the radar, like maybe, well, not under the radar, but I guess more of a dark horse. You know, obviously people are looking at Breeze, Rivers, and Brady as the main free agents, depending on where they end up. Don't be surprised if they find someone in the draft. I think Matt Nagy's really creative, and I just don't think Trubisky really fits with him. Anyways, moving on. Next, we got Pittsburgh. I think a wide receiver is needed there too. I mean, luckily we have so many teams needing wide receivers. I mean, just think of the Chiefs. They won the Super Bowl, and I mean, they have a ton of great wide receiver weapons. I really think that's a good part of a winning formula in today's game. 10 yards a catch is 31st place for Pittsburgh. They were last in first downs by receptions in the league. They had James Conner carry a lot of the load last year. Once Ben Roethlisberger went down, then Conner got hurt multiple times. Then they had Jalen Samuels come in. Obviously injuries were not helping them last year, and still got that huge question mark of whether Juju can be a number one or not. Maybe they are missing Antonio Brown. Who knows? Next up, Tampa Bay. I really think they need a new quarterback. 5% of the passes thrown in Tampa Bay were intercepted. So out of every 20 passes thrown, there was an interception. I just think that's crazy. I don't think that's acceptable for the NFL in today's league, especially with the amount of throws Winston had. I mean, if you have a 5% interception rate, but you throw the ball like 15 times a game, you're fine. But there were games where Winston was throwing for probably in the area of like 50 attempts a game, and I just don't think that's going to work. Shaquille Barrett had a great breakout year. He had 19 sacks. I think he led the NFL in sacks last year. He was on a 1-year deal, so I really don't think they'll be re-signing him. He'll be asking for a ton of money. I mean, good for him. He just made himself millions of dollars. But he's going to be expensive. So if he leaves, they'll need an edge rusher. Even if he stays, I always think having 2 great edge rushers, it's not going to hurt you. It might be expensive, but it's a good position to double up at. Obviously, if you're having 5% of your passes be intercepted, your O-line can probably be at fault for a couple of those. Now, then again, Winston's not exactly the most calm and collected pocket passer, so you can't blame that all on the O-line. But don't be surprised if they're going to be looking for some new starters on the O-line through the draft or free agency. Next up, we got the Jacksonville Jags. The only thing I wrote down was running back. Obviously, they have more holes than that, but this one was pretty glaring. They had 3 total rushing touchdowns, and I'm pretty sure 1 or 2 of those was from Gardner Minshew, actually. So Fournette did not have a great year. I think their backup was possibly TJ Yeldon, and he's mainly a receiving back. Just not a good year for their backs, especially one of them being Fournette, who was thought to have been an elite back in the league. But then again, I don't really think backs have much of a say in today's game. It's sad, running backs are fun to watch. They're flashy, fast, and strong. And think of Saquon, but I just don't think it's how you win in today's league. I mean, the Chiefs win a Super Bowl with Damian Williams. I mean, who is that guy, honestly? Next up, once again, Falcons. With a running back, they were 3rd worst in the league for yards on 1st and 10 rushing attempts. I mean, they have Devontae Freeman and Ito Smith. I think 2 all-right running backs. But obviously, I mean, first and 10 is when you hope to, get more than 3 or 4 yards on a rushing attempt, because there's a good chance the defense is backing up a little bit on 1st and 10, expecting to pass. But if you're that bad in the league on 1st and 10, I think it shows you need a new running back. Devontae Freeman's washed. I don't think he's good enough. Let's see. They have Desmond Trufant in terms of cornerbacks. He was like the 20th ranked cornerback in terms of Pro Football Focus's grades, which is good. But I mean, I think sometimes a corner is only as good as the corner on the other side of the field. I mean, having a lockdown corner is great, but I mean, then they're just going to throw to the other side of the field all game long. It's not going to matter. Next, we got the Jets. They're going to need new weapons for Sam Darnold. Robbie Anderson is most likely leaving. They put way too much pressure on Le'Veon Bell. I think they threw to him too much. The Jets overall averaged 3.3 yards a carry, which is terrible. That's in the bottom 3 of the league. They have problems at O-line. Kelvin Beachum is leaving. He was their highest graded offensive lineman, and he's up for free agency this year. Personally, I think their best rusher this year was Jamal Adams. He made the most plays at getting to the quarterback. Obviously, he had that play where he just ripped the ball from Daniel Jones' hands. And if your best rusher is your safety, then you obviously need to sort your life out and get some edge rusher, get some pressure up the middle, something like that. So Jets need a haul on the defensive line. Got the Cardinals, what I wrote down, they need help in the whole secondary. They give up 300 receiving yards a game. I don't care how good Kyler Murray is. I don't care how good of an arm he has. If your defense is giving up 300 receiving yards per game, that's terrible. That's not even counting rushing yards. And 300 all-purpose yards for an offense a game is like decent. And if you're giving up that many passing as a defense, that's, like I said, not good at all. Their main tight end last year was I'm forgetting his name. Either Darren Fells or like Safarian Jenkins or Ricky Seals-Jones, something like that. Obviously, if I can't think of his name, he's not good enough. I think a tight end that can stretch the field is important in today's game. Now Kyler Murray, there's a stat I read. He was the quarterback that was responsible for the most amount of sacks. That's going to happen in your first year, I think. Also, with him being such a mobile, elusive quarterback, he'll get better with that. But getting better pieces on your O-line, it can't hurt. Next up, I have the Lions. Darius Slay is one of the elite corners in the league, but just like the Falcons, I mean, with Desmond Trufant, I mean, you can have as good as a number one corner as you want, but if your number two is that much worse, then it doesn't matter. The offense is just going to isolate that one corner all game and just destroy your defense. They also gave up basically 300 yards a game. Their two of their linebackers, Jarrad Davis and Christian Jones, were the two lowest graded linebackers by Pro Football Focus. So they're going to need new linebacking help for next year if they want to compete. Cincinnati Bengals, once again, kind of like the Dolphins. Where do they not? I already did the Bengals. My bad. Baltimore Ravens. What I wrote down is edge rushing help, offensive guard, and center help. If you look at a lot of the games from the Ravens last year, they didn't receive a ton of pressure from the outside. It kind of helps being a tackle, especially with a quarterback like Lamar Jackson that can just evade every single rusher. But pressure through the middle is going to hurt a team like the Ravens that run to the ball so much. So I think they're really going to invest in the run game and get more interior O-line help. Edge rushing is going to be needed. I mean, just like with every other team, I really think edge rush and pressure off the edge is such an important component of defense. It gets hands in the quarterback's face, it pressures them, makes them move, makes them uncomfortable. And I mean, you can only pass so well if you have so much pressure. And the Ravens did not provide enough pressure off the edge all of last year. Next, we got the Cleveland Browns. Help for the O-line. They traded their best guard to the Giants in the OBJ trade. It was Kevin Zeitler, I believe. And I think that actually hurt them a lot. I mean, you can get away with having like one or two bad O-linemen if the other two or three pick up the slack, and you can double the best rushers on defense. But I mean, the Browns O-line was just a mess last year. It doesn't help that Baker's once again not super experienced and maybe a little antsy in the pocket, and he is also not that tall, which I don't think helps a pocket passer. So yeah, O-line help would be needed. Look for them to fill that in the draft or free agency. Demarius Randall, one of their starting safeties, could be leaving, as well as their other safety, but I forget his name, but he's not as he's not as important. I think they would have been looking to maybe improve his position anyway. But like I said, Randall could be leaving. If he decides to stay, he might be a little bit expensive. He came over from the Packers, um, I believe, last offseason. Then I have New England next. I put QB and a question mark. I mean, is Tom Brady staying? Is Tom Brady going? If I had to guess, I think he's going to go. I mean, his whole career, at least for the last 5-10 years, he's been labeled as a system quarterback that can't win anywhere else. And I mean, how great would it be for him to join a team on a 1-year deal, a team like the Titans or Chargers that has other pieces, maybe even the 49ers, although I don't know how they'd pull that off with Jimmy G being there. How great would it be for him to join a team and win a Super Bowl and retire on that note and never be called a system quarterback again? I think that'd be a good move for him. So as of now, I'm not planning on the Patriots having a quarterback. So, I mean, don't be surprised if they look to fill that in the draft, or they could be picking up someone like Rivers, try another veteran quarterback out there. Obviously, a big reason why Brady's probably leaving is they never gave him weapons. I mean, their best receiver last year, was Antonio Brown for like 1 week against the Dolphins. I mean, I can't think of the last time they had a true receiver that could line up on the outside, one-on-one versus the quarterback, and make space for himself. I mean, you can think of N'Keal Harry, who was a rookie last year. He was on IR for almost the full year, it seems like. In the games he did play, he did not live up to the first-round pick that they used on him. I mean, the last truly game-changing receiver I can think that they had besides Antonio Brown was probably Randy Moss, and that was years ago. So, I mean, who says they'll change? Belichick's never been good at getting good receivers in New England. Maybe he feels like they never needed them. Maybe he feels like they could just use guys like Edelman or Wes Welker or Amendola all day long. But we'll see what Belichick does over there. I mean, as long as Belichick is in New England, they're always going to compete, especially with the terrible shape that the AFC East is in. I mean, I guess besides the Bills, they're not doing too well. Or I'm sorry, they're not struggling as much as they used to. Speaking of the Bills, I think a big target receiver would be great for them. Kind of like they had in, I'm going to guess Sammy Watkins a few years ago when he came out of Clemson. So, yeah, I mean, they have John Brown and Cole Beasley. They're small, quick guys. Cole Beasley kind of like a mini Julian Edelman. John Brown, great speed. He can separate on the edge. But yeah, I mean, someone like Alshon Jeffrey, Cortland Sutton, just like a type of player like that can post up. And, I mean, even a tight end. I mean, they had Dawson Knox. You can say breakout year. He had a better year last year. He's all right at the tight end position. I don't think he's a game changer. But yeah, I mean, if you're going to stick with Josh Allen, I mean, find him weapons down the field. I mean, the defense has a big enough problem with him being able to run and how strong he is and his strong arm. Decision making and his accuracy is, not where you'd want it to be for an elite quarterback. But yeah, if they get him help, I don't see why why the Bills can't make the next step and be a true force in the AFC playoffs. They're also going to need help on the edge. Shaq Lawson's leaving. I think Ed Oliver had a good first rookie year, but how good can an interior D lineman be if there's no edge pressure? Same thing with, as we'll talk about with Aaron Donald in LA. Also, they're going to need O-line help. Read a story that one of their best O-linemen, Quentin Spain's leaving. He might stay, but it could cost him a little bit. So yeah, it could be filling a hole or two on the O-line. For the Texans, cornerback help is needed. They got Bradley Roby and Jonathan Joseph leaving. They got Vincent Hargreaves in a trade mid-season last year, and those three guys, they sufficed on the edge last year. Outside last year, but they're all leaving, so we'll see how many or if any they get back. They'll probably be looking for one or two in free agency, then adding depth in the draft. They traded for Tunsil last year in a pretty big trade. They also got Kenny Stills in that trade, who had an all right year. But if you just watch the Texans game, Watson was getting battered. Like Laramie Tunsil, he's a good tackle. He's a solid B+ tackle that they'll have for several years. But I just don't think he's enough. One good tackle is not enough to protect one quarterback. So next up, I have the Tennessee Titans, and let's see. I mean, I put quarterback question mark and running back question mark because Tannehill and Derrick Henry are both technically free agents. We'll see which, if any, or if they get both of them back. Some people are thinking Rivers or Brady could come in a quarterback, or they franchise tag Henry or franchise tag Tannehill. We'll see what happens. They also have one of their best tackles, Jack Conklin. They might have to commit to him long term, pay him a lot. We'll see if they do that or not. If they don't, they'll have to get a new tackle. They signed Taylor Lewan to a big deal last year, and I don't think he had as great of a year last year. Mariota faced a lot of pressure, and obviously he got injured. If your quarterback's getting injured, I think that shows that your line might not be sufficient. So we'll see what they do on the with their tackles. And their best edge rusher last year was Cameron Wake at 38 years old. First of all, he's 38 and he's their best rusher, and great for him. But that just shows like they got to get younger. They got to get some guys that will stick around in Tennessee for a while on the edge. Next up, I have the Jaguars. Obviously, Foles broke his collarbone, I believe, or dislocated his shoulder, something like that, in week 1. And I don't think they did a good job protecting him. He had okay weapons in terms of Marquise Lee and DJ Chark. I can't even name the tight end they have. I don't know if I'm blanking, but that just shows they need more weapons. I actually believe I mentioned the Jags earlier. Oh yeah, with their running backs. But yeah, I think I just made a separate note for this. Yeah, they need to work on their offense. It was terrible last year. Obviously you have a good debate in Foles versus Minshew. Like that's going to be a huge story all offseason. Personally, I think they just go with Minshew. Just because you're paying one of them like $20 million more than the other. You're paying them both already. Might as well just play the one that's playing better. So we'll see what they do. Like I said, they need more weapons. Josh Allen had a good rookie year on D, but they got to get some interior line help for him. For the Chiefs, obviously Super Bowl champions. I think it showed in the Super Bowl. They need a bit more help at cornerback. Rashad Breeland had a great game. He had the pick. But they gave up a lot of big plays as well. San Francisco not really being a huge big play team, so I don't think it hurt them in the Super Bowl. But you're in a division that's got the likes of Keenan Allen, Cortland Sutton, and we'll see what the Raiders do in the offseason. But you got to get some more pieces there. And Tyrann Mathieu can't do everything on that defense. Sure, he's the safety and he's kind of the field general for that defense, but like I said, can't do everything. Next up, we got the Raiders. They signed Tyrell Williams. I don't think he's a good number 1. He had a very lackluster year. And similar to the Chiefs, they gave up a lot of big plays. They're going to need help in the secondary. Nothing much else for the Raiders. Chargers, I put down quarterback. It's been reported by Adam Schefter that Phillip Rivers is now returning to the LA Chargers. So we'll see what they do there. Their backup is Tyrod Taylor, I believe. So, I wouldn't be surprised if they stick with him, Melvin Gordon and Eckler, Allen, Hunter Henry, Mike Williams. That's a great set of weapons for any quarterback. And I think Tyrod Taylor's always been underrated. I think he can do well with good pieces around him. So, I wouldn't be surprised if they save a buck, keep Tyrod Taylor, then put more money into the defense and just roll the dice on that. Now, if they are going to be getting a new franchise guy in the draft or signing someone like Tannehill or Bridgewater, they're going to need a better O-line. I don't think Phillip Rivers ever got the benefit of having an actual good O-line. I think it would have been a lot better if they invested in that. And investing in a good O-line is never a bad thing, no matter what kind of quarterback you have. It's always going to make them play better. At the interior D-line, they had Jeffrey Tillery that they drafted last year. He was the lowest graded defensive tackle of everybody last year, so they need a better defensive tackle. Next up, we got the Green Bay Packers. Same story, different year. They need weapons for Aaron Rodgers. Devontae Adams is great, but I mean, your wide receiver one can only be so good. You can't throw to him every single play. I mean, Aaron Jones had a great year last year, a bunch of rushing touchdowns. They had Jimmy Graham at tight end, who's not good enough. Their number 2, 3, and 4, Valdez Scantling and Ronald Allison. I believe they had Lazard as well last year come up. I mean, they got a little unlucky with injuries. You know, Devontae Adams had the turf toe, super random injury halfway through the season. But yeah, I mean, you also kind of got to ask yourself. I mean, that's not a terrible set of weapons when you really think about it. Is Rodgers like good enough? I mean, in the NFC Championship game, I just don't think he took enough chances. I think he played really soft. I mean, he's had the lowest interception rate over the past like 5 years. Or he's definitely in like the top 3 lowest. I mean, that's good, but I think it also shows that like you play a little safe. I mean, sometimes you want someone like Jameis Winston. I mean, sounds crazy, that's just gonna hug it deep and throw it to your best receiver, and just give your receiver a chance to catch it and see what happens. I mean, worst is gonna happen. Well, I mean, this is why I'm not an NFL coach, but worst is gonna happen is just you throw a pick and it's like a 50-yard punt basically. They need help at corner. Kevin King was not too reliable last year. You also have Tremont Williams, but it feels like he's been on that team for 20 years. He's got to be getting old. I think they just need to get younger and more reliable at the position, but what team doesn't need that? Next up, get the Vikings. They have great safeties, good linebackers, but I think they really are going to need some lockdown corners. I mean, in the NFC, you're going to be facing the likes of Devontae Adams and Michael Thomas, and it's never going to hurt to have just a lockdown corner, just to clam up that side of the field. Let's see. I wrote down wide receiver depth. Excuse me. Thielen was out with that random injury for a while, and Diggs was a little inconsistent. He had his fits last year. But I mean, you go into the year last year thinking Thielen and Diggs are the two best. Like, it's the best receiving duo that we've seen in a while, and I don't know, I just think it shows it's not enough. I mean, maybe they need a new tight end. Was Rudolph good enough? Dalvin Cook obviously had a great breakout year last year. So we'll see. But yeah, like I said, I think wide receiver depth is needed. Next up, I have the Dallas Cowboys. I think it's important that they keep Byron Jones at cornerback. Having a cornerback like him is really important. They'll need to replace Jason Witten. I mean, I think he's finally retiring for good, but even if he stays, I don't think he's good enough. I mean, he did well in the red zone for them, and he found his way, but I think for Dak, I mean, he's got a good enough weapons in Gallup and Cooper and Zeke, and also Randall Cobb, but I think a tight end is just as important. They need an edge rush. They've needed that for years. I don't think they found any of it last year, and yeah, I mean, keeping Byron Jones and having a good safety and a good offense is all great. But if you're not pressuring the quarterback, what's that doing for you? Next up, I got the New York Giants. I think they need consistent edge pressure, and an experienced corner. All of their corners, I think all 4 of their top corners were either rookies or in their second year last year, and I mean, they didn't have a great defense last year. I think that's not a terrible thing to have, for your corners to all be super young. It just shows that, like, they're able and, at least, like, talented enough to be playing at that young. But I think experience at that position is never going to hurt. So we'll see. But yeah, I mean, simply put, I think edge pressure with some experience at corner, it'll help the Giants there. Redskins, similar to the Bengals and Dolphins, it's like, where do they not need help? I think Haskins, they should give him time, literally. They need help on the O-line. I watched a few Redskins games last year, and I just felt like he was getting destroyed every single time he dropped back. Even in shotgun passes, like, feels like he got the ball, and the defense is there already. So they're going to need help on the O-line. Terry McLaurin, great rookie year. I think he should have gotten Rookie of the Year, personally, with the circumstances he was in. But just like every other wide receiver one, I mean, I'm guessing I'm calling him a wide receiver one now. he needs help. He's going to need a tight end. He's going to need some running back. Obviously, they had Darius Juice or Geis. I don't know how to say his name. He was out last year. They'll have Bryce Love, who was out all last year with an ACL that he tore in college, I believe. Or it was actually like a workout or something right before the combine. It was right around this time last year that Bryce Love tore his ACL. But they'll have some good running backs next year. We'll see what Adrian Peterson decides to do. But yeah, I mean, if you help out Haskins and McLaurin, two great young pieces to build an offense around, I mean, we'll see where they can go. I mean, Ron Rivera's, I think he's got a fun little project on his hands. Next up, we got the Saints. Michael Thomas, I think he's got to get a good counterpart at wide receiver. I mean, how good can your wide receiver one be if you have no help? I mean, I think we're really uncovering some themes. Like, I think depth is needed for most teams outside the numbers at wide receiver and cornerback. I mean, a wide receiver and corner, you got two on each side of the field every single time. So if you have a great number one, awesome. But if your number two is not good enough, then your offense can only go so far. And I mean, they have Ted Ginn. They had, man, I can't even think of another receiver on the Saints. Yeah, I forget. I had some guy on my fantasy team a couple years ago, but I forget his name now. So yeah, like I said, wide receiver help for Thomas. Quarterback question mark. Will we see Breeze retire, go to a different team? I don't think he'll go to a different team. I think if he's gonna play, he's gonna play for the Saints. You got Taysom Hill still. I mean, it's a fun, creative offense. So we'll really see what they end up doing. One of their best corners, Eli Apple, is a free agent now. That's a hole they need to fill. He might just come back, but they'll have to pay him. And last two teams, Seahawks and Rams. Seahawks, like every single year, please get some O-line help for what Russell Wilson. He is going to die. Like, literally, he's going to fall apart if he doesn't get protection for one more year. I don't know how he hasn't had a career-ending injury yet. I mean, every time I see him get sacked, I just think of Andrew Luck and how he got just destroyed for multiple years, and Andrew Luck just decided to retire. Clowney, there's a good chance Jadeveon Clowney will be leaving after they traded for him last year. I think he likes it there. He did pretty well, so I wouldn't be surprised if he stays and even maybe cuts him a good deal, because I think at this point he just wants to win. But yeah, O-line help for Russell Wilson, maybe edge help if Clowney leaves. Then the LA Rams. I mean, if you think of the Rams a couple of years ago, they got to the championship, not the championship. They won the NFC championship, got to the Super Bowl, and I mean, Goff. It's not like he became this star quarterback. I mean, all he had was time in the pocket and good weapons. I mean, most quarterbacks in the league with time in the pocket and good weapons are gonna be able to get to the Super Bowl. So I think that's what needs to happen. They got to get back to their old ways. They got to get Gurley going. They got to get a good O-line. And on the defensive side of the ball, I mean, Aaron Donald's been a force in the league for multiple years now, but I feel like when I watch a Rams game, he almost hides, and not to his own fault. I mean, he's getting doubled every single time. But if they get edge help or even, just a force as a middle linebacker that can blitz every now and then, like, he won't be getting doubled every single snap. Then you can really see Aaron Donald just become a great player and, like I said, not get doubled every time. So that's it. I kind of just ran through every team. That's just my quick thoughts. Took a little bit on every single team. Next NFL video, I'm going to be looking at free agency. What are the top free agents I think, where I think they fit the best. I'll be doing a mock draft here pretty soon. So yeah, that's it. Hopefully you agree with me. If you don't, please leave a comment. So yeah, that's it for today. Hope to see you guys next time. See you.